So in part 3, we're going to focus on creating the hover effect where we have not only the value and the label, but also an additional event label where you can see your end of year plan or marketing plan, another marketing plan, end of year plan, all these kind of different projects that needs to be in there. So let's start to look how we can do this in chartjs 4. So this part is part 3 of creating an annual wheel like a Plandisc chart. What we need to do is the hover effect. So basically when I hover on one of these items, I would like to see certain text in here, and that could be any text. In this case, what I will do is I will put in the number, the value in here. You could get the label itself, and I want a custom item. If I'm not mistaken, would be a date, then the day, probably the week of the day, and something more like an event or appointment. So we're going to put in this. Basically, it's like a calendar or a date planner. So to do that, what I will do is I need to have this plugin, the annual wheel plugin, but also some additional text, because this text here only shows the weekly sales, or basically the label. We have here the labels, but what I want now is a custom event for the specific data point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say event, and we're allowed to do this because this is just JavaScript, so we can create or add new namespace or objects in here. So in this case, the namespace will be event. That's our object, which is an array, and we could say here, for example, marketing plan. I'm just going to put in some items here. Just make sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you could say here sales plan, HR plan, deadline project, hire ABC, and then anything else. End of year plan. I have no idea. I'm just making it up as I go. So because we have this, I need to make sure everything is consistent, or else of course we'll get an error because we'll be later on searching for these kind of object values. So we have them for all of them, so that if you hover on one or the other, it will always find something. So now let's start to work on putting our text. So we have the text circle here, and we could change this text circle. We could even remove the scale. We don't need this anymore. It was just some demo here. So we have this inner circle. We could change it to a color if you want to have a color for the arc. What you can do here is ctx.fill style, and this could be a color like that. And we could say here red or something. There we are. But I don't want that. I'll just keep it, or let's make this gray. That'll be fine. There we are. So what I want to do now is I want to have white text within. We can either put it here in the center or at the very top. I'm going to put on both places so you have an exact option or know exactly how you can put them wherever you want them. So what I'm going to do here is, because we have here the translate, which resets or changes the 0, 0 item or 0, 0 position for the X and Y. This is very important. I need to keep this in. We have here the restore, which will undo everything afterwards. So what I would like to do to avoid additional code, just to put in here the text of hover data point, I guess. So then what I'm going to do here is a few things. And the first one is, since we have 3 data points here, we could basically use here a for loop where we can calculate or count how many data points we have, and then we say a for loop so we can loop through these. So what I'm going to do here is a constant, let's say data sets length equals, and then we go up here, and basically we have here the data object. I didn't use this yet, but now we're going to use this. So I say equal to data, which is, in other words, just the same as going into this data here. Then we can say data sets, and then we can go deeper and deeper. So we're going to scroll down here, dot data sets, and then we're going to say here the length of this, of course. Make sure we have a dot, so that we get a value of 3. So once we did this, what I want to do here is create a for each loop, or before we even do that, let me just put in the text, and then we can create the complicated part. So the first thing what I want to do then here is I say the font. So ctx.font, and I'm going to say here, this will be a 20 pixels. Let's make it bold. 20 pixels. Font family will be sans serif, which is the default font family of chart.js. Then, what I want to do is I want to give it a color. I'm going to say ctx.fill style. I will make this the white color so it will easily stand out. And once I did that, I want to put in the text. So I'm going to say ctx.fill text. And the fill text for this one, I will put in the very center. So let's say here first ABC. And then I'm going to say here position X and Y. And the X and Y in this case, the center is just 0, 0. Because of our translate that we have it here. So once I did this and save this, refresh, you can see here we're getting something. I want to put it in a proper center. Right now it's not text align center. So let's do that one. Next, ctx.text align equals center. Save, refresh. There we are. What we could do as well, if ever it feels like it's not in the vertical level center, we can say ctx.text baseline and put the baseline in the very middle. Although I think it is same, or although it did move a little bit, so I will accept that one, so that's good. So now what I want to do here, of course, is I want to grab the value. How do I grab that value? Basically, we can do the following. Let me just show you. We do a console log, and I'm going to say your data. Or I think we can, well, probably we have to get the data. Data sets. Let's do index 0 data. If I do this, you will see we will get all the data information. If I even go from data to here, just a data set, which is basically this data set object, we should see here every array we have. And you can see here we have the different data sets here. And you can see here the different items, the event. So we can grab one of those. So what I will do is I'll just get the value for this. So I'll say here the data set, put it in here, dot data, and then here we say 0. If I do this, save, you can see here 18. And of course, if I do this one, and let's change the numbers a little bit, let's say 2, 12, I guess here 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Then here I'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Save that, refresh. There we are. All different numbers. And now what I want to do is I want to make sure that those numbers, as we hover, will be extracted and put in the center. So we have this here now. Of course, this is 1. If I say here 0, we should have 12 or 18. And then if I say index number 2, we should have 1. Alright. This works, but I don't want to draw it only when we're when it's like this, because this is a static value. What I need to do here is make sure that are we on hover. So that's what we're going to do next. So to do this, you can see here we have another option, which is basically the chart.getDataSetMeta. That's what you already know. This is in the previous video. Let's say your data, and we say here 0 and then dot active. If it is active, and this is specifically for data point 0 of dataset 0. So that is this one here. It becomes true. And that is what we're going to use to draw in here. So what I'm going to say here, because this here is basically necessary to create a for loop, so we can check in which dataset we're hovering on and which data point. So let's start to work on that complicated structure. So what I'm going to say here is going to grab this, put this in here, or before you even put it in here, I guess what we need to do here is to create a for loop, say let I equals 0, and then we're going to say here we have the data set length. There we are, that's this one, that's the reason why we had that. And then we say here we're going to we're going to make sure that if I is smaller than the dataset length, I want to increment this with I++, so we add up here. Then in here, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say this, but then instead of 0, I'm going to put in an I, so it will loop through every item here. And as it loops through, we can say here dot data, and then we're going to do here a for each loop. So it's a loop within a, or a nested for each loop into a for loop. So I say here this, and then we can say here the following: for every data point and index with an n, then a function arrow expression, and then put in these. There we are. So then what I want to do is we're going to cut out this, put it in here. That's number 1. So then what I want to do here is, because we have this here, let's see, this data point, we can now make that easier as well, I guess, for this, because here we can put an I, and we can put in here the index for this. And then what I would like to do here is check if we are active hovering on that segment. So what I can say here then is, if the data point dot active equals strict true, if that is the case, please draw whatever we want to draw, else don't draw anything at all. So once we did this, put it in here, save that, refresh. All right, let's see here. There we are. Now we're getting the net values nicely shown. So now what I want to do is I want to extract that and put in the event value. So, well, let's put this value, what we have here, at the very top. So what I'm going to say here, this, well, if we remember, from the center, that's the 0, 0 position, and this is the radius at the very top. Basically, it is the radius that we have calculated here, the inner circle, because it is the outer radius divided by 2. So what I'm going to say here, we could just say 0, and then I need to go up. And if this is 0, going down is increasing the value, but going up is a negative value. So that will mean that we say here minus inner circle, and let's see where we're getting positioned at. As you can see here, we're slightly high. I would say here what I want to do is plus 20 pixels. So we have additional pixels going down. There we are. And of course, you could make it even more, maybe 30 pixels if you have more text. So for example, in my case, I would like to get not only the number, I would like to get the text as well. So what I can say here is an additional value to get the label. And for that, what I'm going to say here is basically I'm going to do this. I'm going here up, data, that labels, and an index number to get Monday, Tuesday, or whatever the day would be. So going down here. And then to make it very simple for concatenation, I'm going to use backtick for template literals. I'm going to say a $sign, and then we're going to put in here the curly braces, and there, and then we can say here $, curly braces, colon for, so this will be Monday, and then here the number, and then we're going to put in here data dot labels, and then index. Let's save that, refresh. There we are. So now we're getting something here that looks quite decent. So what I want to do next then is the text underneath here, or let's put it down here. And then how can we do this? I'm just going to copy this, put that in here, and then we're going to grab the event. You can say here event, and I'm just going to put in here the information of this event. And the event value will be $, and then we're going to say here basically the same, but now let's copy all of this, put it in there, the data set with the I, and then here instead of data we're going to say here, event. Let's save that, refresh, and now we're getting the item, but of course the text should be in a proper position. Let's say here 0, 0. Let's make it on 0. There we are. That looks quite nice. You can put it up as well if you want to. Then you have to calculate how many pixels that is. If you're not sure, it's approximately 20 pixels plus maybe 5 or 6 pixels of additional space between there. And then you could just say here, whatever the inner circle is, minus 60 or plus 60 or something like that. I think we've got here now everything what we need. And to be honest, it looks quite nice.